we will recording in progress, y'all. When the presentations are over, we may have time for more questions and answers and even discussion. We will do our best to summarize key themes and ask as many of your questions as possible, but we might not be able to get to all the questions. Finally, this session is being recorded. The video will be available next week in both English and Spanish, and we'll send you an email when the recorded sessions are available. All right. The North Carolina General Assembly is on break this week, as many of you know, so we don't have any updates for you from the legislature. But of course, you can always access the legislative tracker on our website for the current status of the bills we're following. And Fawn will drop that link in the chat box for those of you who haven't checked it out yet. So a few weeks ago, we hosted an American Rescue Plan, or ARP for short, overview. Well, consider today its sequel. Today, we'll explore our local ARP toolkit, as well as learn about some additional awesome real-life examples and ways the ARP funds can be used locally. Every county and school district in North Carolina and all of our larger cities and towns are receiving millions of dollars in relief funding through the American Rescue Plan, which is why we've created a toolkit to help you advocate with your city and county to make sure those funds support the children and families you serve. So today you'll hear a success story from Jane Morrow, Executive Director of New Hanover County Smart Start. We'll gain additional perspective on how the city of Durham is getting residents' input into ARP spending from Leila Pedersen, City of Durham Fuse Fellow, and our very own Fawn Patterson, DJ Fawn, NC Child Campaigns Director, will review the new NC Child Toolkit for ARP. So with that being said, Jane, the floor is all yours.
All right, so this is going to be just casual. I'll just sort of talk about what we've done in New Hanover County and then welcome questions. And I see some of our New Hanover County folk on here, so shout out to Javene and Ann and other people, so chime in. So in New Hanover County, one of the things that allowed us to have some conversations and get some funding for early childhood with the ARP money is that we have a real bedrock foundation that we can build on. So it's years of relationships, it's years of conversations with county personnel, the people at the county commissioners level, and then people in the county office. So as an example, our county has 8 strategic objectives in their 2018-2023 strategic plan. And one of them is to promote early learning that ensures lifelong resiliency. So if the county has that as a strategic goal, then when we come to them and say, hey, these are things that are important, there's a bucket that they can fit it in. You know, so even if it's something that they're not normally thinking about themselves as doing, all the work over the last, 20 years that sort of helped get to that point means that the commissioners, when they're asked to do something, have a placeholder for it, a way that it makes sense for their strategic goals instead of something that maybe feels like it's coming from the outside. So for example, and Ann and Javene, correct me if I get the specifics wrong, but I believe it's 3 or 4 years ago, the county funded 3 3-year-old classrooms outside of Head Start, outside of NC3K. County funded additional classrooms for 3-year-olds that were, at risk for not entering school ready to succeed. This year in their budget, they added 3 more classrooms. So in addition to the ARP money, they're putting some county dollars into making sure that 3-year-olds who, if we had more room in Head Start, they might be able to be in Head Start, but we don't have enough slots. So the county said, well, we want to do this. And they took their time with it and got some data, and the data was amazing. And so they said, yeah, well, let's do 3 more classrooms. So I guess that's the first point, is that there's a placeholder for this. And then the second point is that there are ongoing, established, trusted relationships. So so I could have a conversation with a county commissioner who's saying, hey, you know, this ARP money is coming down. We're starting to have some conversations about what ways we can, what things we can do with it. And, you know, we've been thinking about nonprofits and what do they need? And that opened up a conversation about not just us as a nonprofit, but what are the people that we serve? What are their needs? The county was already talking about increasing social workers in every one of our schools throughout the county. So they were already having some conversations about the mental health needs of children. You know, having seen, are we in school, are we not in school, part-time, not time, you know, seeing the stress on the teachers and the children and the parents. So they were already thinking about that in the school system, which then made it a very easy thing for me to say, well, that's wonderful. That is so amazing. And what about the 25% of children who are birth to 5 who are not yet in school? That's a large portion of our population, and they have needs too. And their needs look a little bit different because they're not going to be able to talk to a counselor the way, you know, an 8-year-old or a 15-year-old can. So we need to think about family services and working with our early care and education system. So, so when we had that sort of very casual conversation, there was a place for me to say, well, or for the county commissioner to say, well, what would you like us to do? Write a proposal. So, you know, if the answer is yes, sir, and you run back to your office and you, you know, you look at some of the things that are being done, and we were able to put together, you know, a bit of a wish list around infant, toddler, infant, early childhood mental health. What might that look like? So propose to them. Maybe we could have some infant, toddler, early childhood mental health consultants in early care and education system, in family support systems, working directly with families, and also propose, well, you know, we want some sustainability with this. What if we had a scholarship program that allowed us to fund 10 people in the community to get a graduate degree or graduate certificate, or even if it was COE hours, you know, rather than, it's not COE, the continuing education hours instead of an actual graduate degree, which might be less expensive. But then we're creating the capacity for our community to meet the needs of the next, and keep our fingers crossed, hurricane or pandemic or whatever might happen. And so I sent it in, they sent it to staff. And again, because we have relationships, in part because of Smart Start structure, we have health department people on our board, we have DSS on our board, we have a, either, in our case, it's a designee for the county manager on our board. So we have these relationships and these conversations. But we also have other county staff that I had worked with and I had a relationship with because I sat on the education committee for the census. So, you know, you say, yeah, I'll sit on your committee because it forms those relationships, because it forms, again, that baseline of helping, making sure that they're not just doing the census at the school system or at the colleges, but hey, what are we going to do with the, you know, how can we use our early care and education programs as a way to reach parents to fill out the census? So again, it often just really comes down to relationships. So we're able to have a phone conversation with the county staff who are putting together a proposal to present to the commissioners for their review, and have some conversations about that, follow-up conversations, what would it look like? And so in New Hanover County, the ARP budget that they passed 3 weeks ago, I think June 22nd, included almost $900,000 for 5 infant early childhood mental health specialists that will going to reside in the health department. So, so these are people that are going to work with our early care and education system, work with their families. We're going to, still in the process of ongoing communication, ongoing conversations with health department, DSS, our Health and Human Services. So our DSS and health department are under one umbrella here. So have conversations with them about what might it look like? How do we help make it happen? What are the services that are already happening that we can link to, all of those kinds of things. And then we're going to be involved in helping, I forgot exactly what it's going to look like, but we have a few years to try and build that capacity for graduate level credentials in early childhood mental health. So, you know, who exactly might be eligible, et cetera, is still a little bit up in the air, but we're just, you know, thrilled that New Hanover County was, you know, just sort of jumped on this. I think they're the first county that passed the budget for what do they want to do with these funds. They're, you know, energetic and ready to go and really listening to the community. So we're thrilled about what we're going to be able to do for early childhood in the community in the next few years. And so that's the story. But, you know, I'd love to have people ask questions or, you know, jump in with, you know, with anything that you might want to ask or have a conversation, not just with me, but among ourselves.
Jane, thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, we do want to open up the floor right now and see if there are any questions for Jane. Of course, you can put them in the chat as well, but if anyone wants to speak up, now is your time.
I don't have a question per se, but I just want to lift up a couple of things that I'm hearing Jane say, just to sort of reinforce the importance of this. And so just, you know, as you all know, there is a lot of money coming in from the ARP funds to your communities locally. So not going through the state, going directly to cities, municipalities, counties, money at the county commissioner level, school board level, all kinds of levels. And so what I hear Jane saying, which I think is really important, is using those existing relationships that you all have, your board has, your sister partner agency has, to sort of talk with county commissioners and other elected officials and decision makers to talk about what the needs are in your community. It's a really unique opportunity to fund things like infant, early childhood mental health consultation, something that we have been talking about for a long time at the state level. And that there's this wonderful opportunity now at the local level to be able to actually move forward and advance some of that work. So I heard Jane talk about those existing relationships and just sort of being bold, right? Like, this is what we need for our kids, and just seeing what flies. Like, now is not the time to be timid about putting forth proposals that will help the kids and the families in your community. And kudos to Jane and New Hanover County advocates for going ahead and working together to put some of these proposals together.
Yeah, I will say that there is a, you know, we have to be ready too, that, you know, you know, if it's a hallway conversation that's about, hey, what does your nonprofit need? It's an opportunity to shift it and say, you know, we're okay, but this is what the community needs, and can you do that? So taking advantage of those sort of serendipitous things that happen, but also then sort of knowing, you know, yeah, I can put together a proposal because we're sort of had, you know, as Michelle said, we've been thinking about this for a long time. And so we're able to, you know, to jump on it instead of, oh yeah, that'd be nice. I'm not sure what we do. You know, if you had a year to plan, we might have proposed something slightly different, but we were able to sort of take advantage of the opportunity when it was presented, because we have some idea of what the kinds of things that our community needs. And there's, you know, it won't take much Googling to see all kinds of articles about parental stress, and particularly mothers. And, you know, it's not going to be hard to make a case for the need to attend to that parent-child relationship and children's social emotional development at this time.
For sure. And there seem to be a few questions in the chat. Fawn and Michelle, keep me tight on time. Betsy McFarland had a question. And when you're a smaller nonprofit, how do you get to the table? There are lots of smaller nonprofits who fill important gaps.
I think I might be going to address that in the presentation I'm giving in a minute. So maybe Jane, if
Excellent.
you want to speak to that, you don't necessarily have to jump on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, you know, we're fortunate in some sense because of who we have on our board, but that doesn't mean that a smaller nonprofit can't work to ask some of those decision makers to be on the board, and also sort of build your way up. I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I wasn't a brand new face when I was talking with a couple of county staff because I had been on some other committees. So, you know, it's sort of a little bit is putting the work in ahead of time to make those relationships, to be on boards and committees and those kinds of things, so that that you're aware of what's happening.
Excellent. And then one more question for the sake of time. Greg asked, did you say the county has passed a full final budget for ARP monies?
Yes. I think we were, is my understanding that we are the first county to have passed that. And that was on, I think June 22nd. So they're raring to go. They know that there's a deadline and they don't want to, you know, come up against it. So they're definitely sort of ahead of the curve in that regard.
Excellent. Well, Jane, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. And we're going to now hear from Leila Pedersen, City of Durham Fuse Fellow, and learn about a lot of the great work they're doing as well. So Leila, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hi, everyone. My name is Leila. I'm very happy to be here. As Tiffany said, I'm an executive fellow working with the city of Durham and came to the city through an organization called Fuse Corps, which is a national nonprofit that brings innovation to local governments. But previously, I was working at the North Carolina Justice Center in partnership with many of you. And so, you know, bring the perspective of being on the side of the advocate to now being on the side of implementation. And so happy to talk about some of the nuances there. So I will share my screen just to show you a bit about what we have planned in terms of community engagement into the ARP funding decision-making process. So Durham realized early on that community engagement was going to be imperative to ensuring that these federal dollars reach people who need them most. So we created this landing page. As you can see, if you go on the City of Durham website and in the search bar, you just type American Rescue Plan. This will be the first search result. I'm going to take a deep breath and pause for the interpreter. Apologies if I'm speaking too quickly. So as you can see, the City of Durham will receive more than $50 million as a part of its allocation, about $52 million actually. And just to emphasize what Michelle was saying, that's an enormous influx of money. That's about a quarter of the city's budget, just drop down one-time funding that is a real opportunity for transformational change. And the way that the city is thinking about this is really as a down payment towards transformational change. So using this one-time funding, and it's very important to remember that this is non-recurring dollars. So the cities are thinking about this as, what can we use this money for in a one-time expenditure way to really test and pilot, at least in Durham, different opportunities and see what can be sustained, you know, in the city budget. So when making proposals, I would recommend thinking about that perspective in terms of, you know, this is a one-time influx of federal dollars that local governments are receiving that won't necessarily be sustained over time. So together, the city and county are actually going to receive over $100 million. The county, Durham County, is going to receive about $62 million. And so different cities and counties are either working together and coordinating or not. And so that's something to be aware of too, that there are multiple access points at local government. You should be approaching your city as well as your county. According to Treasury guidance, these are the allowable uses for the funds: supporting public health expenditures, addressing the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, aiding communities hardest hit by the crisis, and providing premium pay for essential workers, as well as investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And I know all of you have been working hard to broaden that definition of infrastructure. So this is the timeline that the city of Durham is currently working with. Over the past few months, we have been doing proactive engagement of communities to understand the needs, as well as to surface and generate ideas for funding. We started this effort with an event co-hosted with North Carolina Central University, where we talked about the needs in community, and we had breakout sessions where residents were able to talk about their own needs and also, propose ideas for how we might spend this money. Moving forward, we have a few ways to engage. We are also going to be hosting another event on the central campus that's going to be focused on students, but we also have a survey. So if you click this link here, it will take you to a survey where we, again, ask questions about needs and ideas. And then we also have an email address where we're asking people to send more robust proposals. And this is the template that we've asked folks to use to submit their proposals. So this is something that you could take and use in any city and county, whether they're asking for this information or not. You can always send your own ideas or proposals to either the budget director or your own relationship or contact within your local government partner. And then at the bottom of the page here, we just have a few more resources that we'd like to link people to. One that I want to just draw a bit of attention to that many of you have probably already seen is this toolkit from PolicyLink. So on the back end, we are using this toolkit as a way to vet proposals. So this will give you an idea of the criteria that are going to be used to evaluate which proposals do move forward and are evaluated for funding by our city council. So just wanted to elevate that as a resource. And then I will drop in the chat. We also have a link to our survey, which our website should be updated today, but we have a link to our survey in Spanish as well. And so I can drop that into the chat. We're constantly working to improve both language access and also access for people with different abilities. So those are just some of the efforts. Oh, let me draw attention just to one more. Because the city of Durham has participatory budgeting, we thought that it would be important to leverage this as an opportunity to engage everyone who had participated in the participatory budgeting process to now re-engage in the American Rescue Plan funding opportunity. So this is, if I can get this up. This is an email that went out to Durham residents who participated in the participatory budgeting process yesterday with links on how to engage, and again with that template. So I'll leave this up for a moment in case anybody would like to scan this QR code. It will take you directly to the survey where you can provide input to the city about ideas for funding opportunities through the American Rescue Plan. I'll just close by saying that the deadline to provide input is July 31st. July 31st is the deadline to provide input. That gives us enough time to vet proposals, to do the things that we need to do on the back end so that our city council is able to vote on these proposals on September 9th. So there will be a city council meeting on September 7th where they will discuss, and the vote will happen on September 9th. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Leila, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now I'm going to open the floor up for questions. Fawn, is the chat box blowing up?
The chat box is full of requests for links and follow-up. Leila, that was really great and so exciting to see how proactive Durham is being and really engaging resident and citizen input. And just so folks know, we will send out an email after this meeting with all the links, video from the presentations in English and Spanish. So Michelle dropped the policy link into the chat box. And I'm trying to see if we have other questions besides that. I think that's it. Just a lot of props to Leila and also to Jane for this great info that you're sharing and your great work.
Fantastic. All right. Well, now it is time to hear from our last speaker of the day, the Fawn Patterson, and she's going to go over the ARP toolkit that we composed. So Fawn, the floor is yours.
All right, so I have a PowerPoint. So I'm Fawn Patterson, and I'm the campaigns director here at NC Child. And I just want to start out my presentation by saying thank you to Adam Sotak, our public engagement director. This workshop today and all the materials that you're getting, this is all Adam's brainchild and his baby. And he's on vacation right now, which we are very happy for him, but sad that he's missing this because he's really the person that has driven our engagement with this local ARP work. And really, and what he is lifting up and recognizing is that this is really, I think, as you're gathering, hopefully, this is an historic moment for local advocacy efforts. If you and others in your community have been working to try to get important initiatives funded locally from your county, your city, your school board, this is your moment, right? Your local leaders have money to spend and they need your ideas. So, just want to, reiterate the scope of this. I think it's over 5.7 billion. That was what I totaled up in relief funds through the ARP that are coming to North Carolina's local governments. So you have money coming to your city and town, you have money coming to your county, and you also have money coming to your school district, your local educational authority or LEA. And just as an example, you've heard about Durham. Here's an example, Goldsboro, North Carolina. If you live in Goldsboro, your city is getting $8.8 million. Wayne County is getting almost $24 million. And then Wayne County Schools is getting over $55 million. And for schools, they have a mandatory set aside to address learning loss of 20%. So that's about 11 million that Wayne County needs to set aside for learning loss. But then that leaves another over $40 million that the school district will be able to use for their different needs. And I think what you're hearing from today and what we sort of already know about this is that every single local government entity is doing this differently. So there is no set pattern or requirement other than that they have to spend this money out by 2026, I think. So, they've got what the Association of County Commissioners has told us that they're telling their members is pause and plan. So, there's lots of needs, there's lots of things you could spend the money on, but Durham's a great example of this. They laid out a timeline to pause and plan, right? I think that's not what we saw in New Hanover. New Hanover was like, yeah, we got this on lock. We know what we want to do with this money. And so we got it done. But other counties are just now figuring out, and cities and school boards, how they're going to spend this money out. So, I think that, some of them are holding extensive community input processes to gather that information and create their priorities. So what we need to do as advocates is to ask. We need to reach out to our local officials and ask them what they're doing. So that's why we created this toolkit for you. It's on our website. This is the link, and we'll send it out again as follow-up from this meeting. It's ncchild.org/ARPA for American Rescue Plan Act. And one of the first things you should do when you land on that website is, I've got it on my screen, the little take action button. When you click take action, it's going to give you sort of a jump start on this process, because what it will do when you click that button is it will connect you to your county commissioner who represents you, your county manager, the city council member who represents you, and your city manager. So it's going to send an email to all of those people just asking basic questions about what's going on with ARPA. So it's going to get you started to find that out. All you have to do is click take action. It'll connect you to the right people and get you started with the information that you need. It does not connect you to your school board members, because sadly that is not part of our action system. We don't have that information loaded into our system. So you'll have to reach out to them yourself and do a little homework there. But we wanted to give you this tool to kind of get you started. The other things that you'll find on this webpage are some FAQs about American Rescue Plan funds. And if you attended our earlier workshop on the American Rescue Plan, or have seen some of the things on your local government's website, you already may know everything there is to know about American Rescue Plan funds, but there are FAQs on the page. There's also a document that shows you how much money your city and your county will get. There's another separate document that shows you what your LEA, your local school district, is going to get. And we tried to link to as many resources as we could, like League of Municipalities, Association of County Commissioners. We'll add this policy link resource that Leila just shared, so that you can find all these guides for your local officials and help them connect. So that's what you're going to find on that website when you click over to the toolkit. So I'm just going to walk you through a few 4 advocacy steps for how you, as an individual, a local nonprofit, local volunteer group, a local agency, can really get engaged in this advocacy. So you're already doing step 1, investigate. And if you click that box, that take action button on our toolkit, you will reach out to your local officials. These are the folks who are making the decisions about how this local ARP money will be spent. We'll connect you directly with most of them. It's just the school board folks that we don't have in our system, and you have to reach out to yourself. But these are the questions that we think you should be asking. And I think I saw some comments in the chat about this too, and folks are really on point here. And the email's pre-populated. When you click take action, these are the questions it's going to ask. How much money are we getting? How are you getting input from local residents? Do you have a formal process, or is it just catch as catch can? What's the best way for residents to get involved in the process? What's the timeline for making decisions about this money? What are your priorities for using the money? It's a great thing to ask your county commissioner, your city, your city council, or your school board member, what do you want to spend it on? And also, who from the community has been speaking up about this so far? You may find that, there's a local group you're already connected to who's engaged. You need to get with them, right? Or you may find that the only people speaking up are your local developers, and you need to know these things. So these are important questions to ask. Step 2, y'all are all community organizers, so you know this. You need to get together with some friends, get on a team. There's power in numbers. So you want to get with your local nonprofits, your community leaders, your neighbors, your local chamber of commerce, your church, etc. Get together with the other movers and shakers in your community. If you don't have those close relationships with your city council members, chances are these folks do. So you want to make sure that you're tapping your friends and working together on this to make sure kids and families are getting some relief through these funds too. Working together with other advocates means educating them, if they don't already know, about what's going on with the local ARP funding and how it could impact your community. This will really help you find out if there are other groups who are already taking action, already working on this. And one thing we want to really encourage you to do is keep Adam Sotak in the loop as you're doing this. Adam is, y'all know he's quite a connector. He's really trying to keep track of everything that everybody is doing locally on American Rescue Plan funding. So I know he's also been helping folks connect with each other. So, in Charlotte, if this person, and that person are all interested in, low-income housing, he's trying to connect those people together and help them work together in Charlotte to get that done. So keep Adam in the loop. His email is here. Like I said, he's out on vacation right now, but he'll be back soon. And he really wants to help y'all stay connected with each other. So once you've, gotten the information that you need and hooked up with some friends, you need to be identifying your priorities for how your local government could be spending these dollars. And Leila actually already gave you a good overview of the kinds of things the funding can be used for. I'm going to run through them quickly. There's 5 buckets. The first one is public health. Shouldn't be a big surprise, right? We're talking about a pandemic, and I have a feeling that your county health department is probably strapped. So spending some money there is a good idea, especially around COVID-19 mitigation, vaccination, behavioral health care, things like that. Economic relief. So, people have been really harmed economically. This is a place where, you can really help low-income families in your community get some economic relief. That's another way these funds can be used. Avoiding local budget cuts. So just replacing lost public sector revenue. Some communities really experienced a downturn in revenue as a result of the pandemic, and this money is also intended to help them so that they don't have to cut local programming. Leila touched on this too, and I think this is a really interesting one, raising wages, so premium pay for essential workers. We've been doing a lot of work in the early childhood sector around the issue of very low wages. This is one place where that could be addressed. Your county, your city, even your school board could be adding premium pay for those essential workers because of their critical infrastructure services. So I think this could be a really fruitful area for some folks to work on. And then local infrastructure, water, sewer, and broadband. This is an area that I think every single county, and probably cities too, already have a maintenance backlog of probably tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. So as this money is coming in, they're like, oh, good, we have plenty of infrastructure needs. It is very easy to spend this money here. And I think for some counties that are moving more quickly on spending the money, this may be the area where you see the money going because there are such huge needs and such a backlog. So those are the 5 buckets to know about. Within that, if you're going to be advocating for kids and families, you need to narrow your focus. One thing, or maybe 2 things that you and your friends and others feel really strongly about. Maybe it is low income housing. We have got to work on this, really focus on that. But think creatively, because there are so many ways this money can be used. Those 5 buckets are actually incredibly broad. Do your research, find out what other folks are doing. And then of course, once you have narrowed your issue, you need to start advocating that issue. So asking questions of your elected leaders and their influencers to find out what their ideas are, and be really specific. I think Leila really pointed you in that direction with the survey from Durham. What exactly do you want them to do? How many dollars? Which program? Being really specific like that is going to make it a lot easier for your leaders and their staff to evaluate your request and respond to it positively. All right, last step is building support for your issue. Engaging with others, you want to make sure that you are providing very clear ways for other folks to get involved. You cannot go it alone. So you want to make sure that whether it's speaking at a local meeting, writing a letter, sharing good information on social media, there are plenty of ways for other people to get involved, and that you're always providing those steps. Getting the word out is really important. So whatever your issue is, make sure that you have a couple of very clear talking points about who, what, when, where, why. Make them extremely short and clear, and use them and repeat them again and again and again. You can use it for outreach to local media. You can talk to reporters. You can write op-eds and letters to the editor. Don't be afraid to say the same thing twice. You need to say it 6, 8, 12, or 100 times to get it through. So creating some good talking points you can use over and over is really helpful in getting your issue across. And one of those points always needs to be a call to action. Very often that action step is, so ask your county commissioner to approve that $10 million for Smart Start, or whatever your ask is. But you want to always have a call to action. Don't ever let people wonder, what should I do after hearing this information, right? Give them the action step every single time. And that's something I will tell you in every presentation I ever give you, because you can't not have an action step. People need to know what to do when they find out what the issue is and what the solution is. So back to the toolkit. This is the link to the resources, ncchild.org/ARPA. So you can get on over there and get the resources that you need. But first things first, click that take action button, connect with your local officials, and find out what's going on with those dollars in your community. Last thing, here's some contact information for NC Child folks. Adam really is your go-to on this, but since Adam's on vacation, I'm giving you my contact info and Lamine's as well, because we can also help you stay connected with Adam and with others in your community as you're working on this issue. So that is it for my presentation. I'm going to turn off the screen share so that I can see the chat, because I can't see it while I'm talking. And I haven't been able to see the chat, so I'm going to look back, but if folks have any comments or questions, I would love to take those now.
And while Fawn is checking the chat, just a quick update. For the rest of this summer, we'll be bringing you short 30-minute legislative updates every Friday. So we're going to give our special guests this summer off. And we hope you can still join us every Friday moving forward. So stay tuned for that. So Fawn, are you seeing any questions in there?
Yeah, I want to lift up, Greg Borum is specifically going to be asking his local governments for a public process. And I think that's a really excellent thing to do, is ask them to do what Durham is doing. Another great example is City of Greensboro. They have a fantastic citizen portal for finding out about ARP funds and making recommendations. So check theirs out. You can share Durham's tool and Greensboro's tool with your local governments. And Leila is reminding us that the ARP funds have to be allocated by December of 2024. So there's no great rush for your local government to allocate these funds. They've still got 3 years to figure out how they're going to spend them. And then Frank is sharing, again, something that Leila lifted up. Your decision makers are going to be thinking about, you know, are there ways that they can make these funds sustainable going forward? And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. When you're making recommendations, I think that your local officials are going to be more receptive to spending that does not commit them to match these funds in the future. So the challenge of that is we need people, right? Many times what we need are like salaries for local city workers, county workers, et cetera. That's a hard thing to fund with this one-time infusion of money. So capital improvement projects, infrastructure, buying equipment, upgrading databases, all that kind of stuff, that's a very easy ask for them to say yes to. But if you're asking them for a long-term commitment, you may also need to think about how could the city or county be making that sustainable into the future. They're going to have to put in local funds to do that. So do you have a proposal for where that revenue could come from that might make it easier for them to swallow that kind of request? And Denny is asking about whether there's dollars specifically targeted to the opioid crisis or drug abuse prevention. I think that is a local decision. However, behavioral health is something that is specifically lifted up in the priorities for ARP spending. And on our ARP Toolkit website, we actually have a little toolkit from Community Catalyst on behavioral health. And so you can grab that and use it with your local governments. And what else? Oh, great. There's a link to City of Greensboro. Elizabeth has dropped that into the chat. So I think those are all the questions. And Greg said he did his own budget analysis as part of this request. So Greg Borum doing his homework, quite a model for the rest of us. But again, we're here to help you connect with the other. There's no one as brilliant as Greg anywhere else, but other folks brilliant like Greg in your local community who may be doing this kind of tough homework on ARPA. So the Janes and the Gregs in your local community, Adam really wants to help you connect with those folks. I don't think Adam can help you with dance moves, but Greg could. So maybe we'll turn on some dance music again at the end of this. Mary is asking about whether schools are addressing infrastructure issues like ventilation. So Mary, that is exactly the kind of thing you can ask them to do. As far as, specific details, like I said, every single local agency is going to be deciding for themselves what they want to spend this money on. So if you want ventilation and in your school buildings, that's a great thing to go with a proposal for. All right. I think that's it for me, Tiffany.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Fawn. So with that, we're going to open the floor up. Does anybody have any announcements or additional questions or comments they'd like to share?
I'm going to make a quick announcement. So next week, believe it or not, we're back to in-person advocacy days. And I just wanted to lift this up on behalf of our partners at the Early Education Coalition. There's going to be an early childhood childcare advocacy day on the 13th. And so I will drop the link in the chat where you can fill out if you're available to come. They actually have stipends available for folks who might be traveling in. It will be from 9 until 2, and Elaine Zuckerman at the coalition will be your contact, and that's in the Google Doc that I'll drop in the link. If you have questions or need help getting connected, you can email me as well, but I hope to see folks out there. Tiffany and I will be there representing NC Child, so looking forward to it.
Indeed. Melissa, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to announce I've been working with proposals with Health and Human Services. We're already listed on CDC as support for children with long COVID and other autoimmune disorders as the top for, children's support. I've been working also on the federal level with Long COVID Alliance to submit federal bills for policy changes. And we're going to be doing a nationwide push for a back to school presentation to go along with all resources. But since I'm here in North Carolina, if anybody is interested, I'm going to put up my my email address in there, and that way, once it's all completed and coordinated and scheduled, if you would like to join, I would love to be feet on ground, especially because I'm in around the Charlotte area, to do this. And like I said, we're working with Department of Education and also HHS with this.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
I just was gonna sort of quickly bounce off a couple of things people said about like sort of doing the research. There are limits on what you can spend this money on. So the more you do that ahead of time, so you're not asking for something that's not allowable, it's probably worth your while. And then Fawn, you had something in your presentation that jiggled me to go. And again, if you can link it to what is already in their strategic goals or already something so that there's a place for them to go, yeah, this is what we do, instead of that's not what we do. So just, those are a couple of things that I think can help make whatever conversations you have a little bit easier and more fruitful.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. And I see Kathleen lifted up PBS NewsHour is hosting a week-long early childhood behavioral health series starting Monday. Fawn, are you seeing any more questions in here? Looks like one from Betsy. Any particular emphasis on the spending in this spending on equity issues?
I mean, that's not part of the directive on spending, but it's definitely something you can lift up. And I think Leila shared the link to the policy link resource on advancing equity through ARP spending. So we can drop that link again, and that will also be in the follow-up materials that we send out today.
Excellent. Natalie, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. It just occurred to me that I should also share that something Fawn said about being creative, that there's the buckets are pretty broad. even though they're specific about categories, but the uses are broad. I work for Healthy Steps, which is a program of 0 to 3, placing a child development specialist, behavioral health specialist in pediatric practices to support families and social emotional health. So one of my colleagues who is working in South Carolina has received some funding through actually the state school superintendent's budget to place a Healthy Step specialist in up to 5 counties. So that's the kind of creativity we could really be looking at, that somebody in a pediatric practice being funded by the school system to help build social emotional resiliency is something that could really be awesome and have some long-term impact. And they're also working on some sustainability plans to carry that forward. And if anybody wants more information, I'd be happy to share. But that's just an example of the creative uses that are really valuable to children and families right now.
Natalie, thank you for sharing that. That's a really incredible example. So thank you for that. Anybody else? All righty. Okay, I see Denny. An invitation from Senator Burr staffers to provide training to all health staffers on ACEs and trauma-informed strategies. That is wonderful to hear. So Denny's contact info is in the chat box should you have any questions or want to learn more. That's wonderful. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you again to Leila and Jane for your presentations and for everybody sharing their ideas and really good questions, and also the Fawn Patterson. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.